Lean in, a little closer. The fire's got 5 minutes of life left, and the mountain is listening. Have you ever wondered why the birds stop singing when you cross the 13th parallel over the Andes? Why the old bush pilots, the ones with the white hair and the steady hands, will add 3 hours to a flight just to skirt the peaks of Cusco? They call them no-fly zones, but it's not because of the weather, and it's not because of the altitude. 10 years ago, a charter pilot named Miller crossed that line, 30,000 feet up, clear skies. Then his GPS didn't just fail, it started counting backwards. His radio didn't go silent, it filled with a sound like 1,000 wet fingers tapping on a glass jar. Miller looked out his cockpit window. He didn't see clouds, he saw the mountain below him pulse, a dull violet light bleeding through the granite. When he finally landed, his hair had turned snow white. He didn't remember the flight, but he couldn't stop tasting copper. Miller wasn't the first, just the latest. The mountain has been doing this since long before GPS, long before radios. That's where Thorne comes in. Welcome to the Chinkana, the place where one is lost. But it's not a cave, it's an engine, and it's still idling. I have something here. Found it in a wax-sealed crate in a basement in Lima. It's the field journal of Elias Thorne, 1954. Thorne wasn't a mystic. He was a surveyor, a man of maps and measurements. He was hired to find a leak in the mountain. Something in the rock was making the local livestock go blind. His first entry is dated August 12th. He writes, "The air at the mouth of the cave doesn't move. It's heavy. It smells of ozone and wet ash, like a thunderstorm trapped in a tomb." Thorne went in with a 3-man team and 500 feet of hemp rope. They didn't find gold. They found the wrongness. For every 3 steps they took, the shadows seemed to grow an inch longer. Thorne noted a metallic tang on his tongue. It grew sharper the deeper they went. He called it the Chinkana, the golden labyrinth. But it wasn't gold on the walls, it was mercury. Silver veins of elemental mercury, weeping from the rock like sweat. Thorne wrote that the walls weren't just wet, they were vibrating. He took out his tuning fork, a standard A440. He struck it against the stone. The fork didn't just ring, it shattered. The mountain was humming at a frequency so low it was liquefying the air in his lungs. They reached a chamber the locals call the kilpa. Thorne's journal gets shaky here. He describes a room lined with vitrified stone, andesite melted into a black obsidian glass. No tool marks, no soot, just stone that had been turned to liquid and frozen in a heartbeat. Diego, his guide, begged him to turn back. The man was shaking. He pointed to the ceiling, to the fire writings, patterns that looked like circuit boards etched in light. Diego whispered one name, Inti Oncoy, the sun sickness. Thorne hesitated. He looked at his compass. The needle was jittering like a dying insect. He counted to 10 and stepped over the threshold anyway. Thorne pushed on. He was a man of science. He didn't believe in sun sickness, not until he found the pools. Deep in the flooded galleries he saw them, the astroblepus, small translucent fish with skin like frosted glass. They had no eyes,
just silver wire whiskers that twitched in the dark. Thorne watched them. A plane must have passed overhead, thousands of feet above. In that second, every fish in the pool turned in perfect unison. They pointed their whiskers toward the ceiling. They were tracking the invisible shadow of the aircraft. They weren't watching the plane. They were sensing the shielding. Thorne reached the center, the whispering vault. In the center of the room sat a disk, not gold, not exactly, a compound curve of mercury amalgam that seemed to swallow the light from his torch. He called it the Pun Chow, the sun disk. It wasn't a religious icon, it was a parabolic mirror. He watched as the disk began to rotate, slowly, silently. It was tracking the sun through 300 meters of solid granite. And as it moved, the 1 hertz thrum in the room intensified. Thorne's ears began to bleed. Not a lot, just a thin silver trickle. He looked at his hands. His fingernails were turning a dull metallic gray. The sun sickness wasn't a virus. It was the body trying to tune itself to the mountain's frequency. He was found 3 days later, wandering the ruins of Saksawaman. He'd lost 30 pounds. His hair was falling out in perfect geometric circles, and he couldn't stop talking about the shadow zones. Thorne's journal ends with a map, but it's not a map of the Andes. It's a line, a straight, surgical line that runs from the peaks of Cusco down through the Altiplano and straight into the heart of Antarctica, to a place called Lake Vostok. He wrote one final sentence before they took him to the asylum. The Andes are the antenna, Antarctica is the battery, and the sun is the operator. The no-fly zones are growing. Every year, the 1 hertz pulse gets a little stronger. The vitrified seals in the Chinkana are cracking, and the breath of the earth is leaking back into our sky. Next time you're on a flight, and the pilot asks you to fasten your seatbelt for unexpected turbulence over a clear mountain range, check your compass. If the needle starts to spin, don't look out the window. You might see the mountain looking back. If you do, it's already tuned you in. The fire's out. The shadows are moving in. I've got the maps for the Antarctic leg of the journey, if you think your heart can take the cold. But for tonight, stay away from the deep places. The Ukupacha is hungry, and it's finally found its receivers.